Yeah, morning da pawb, croeso cynnes, good morning and welcome to everyone here. 3rd of April to it's an echo, is there? Someone's got their speaker on. How are we looking now? Is that okay, Carol? Just bear with us, members at home. We're just having a bit of feedback in the chamber. Okay. Any feedback now? Is that better? Yeah, good. Good. As I say, welcome to the Planning, Taxi Licence and Rights Away Committee on Thursday, 3rd of April 25. We have 4 applications before us this morning. So we'll start as always. Carol, please, with the apologies and roll call.
Thank you, Chair. So, Councillor Gareth D. Jones.
Emma.
Councillor Adrian Jones.
Present.
Councillor Tom Colbert.
Present.
Councillor Angela Davis. Councillor Angela Davis, you're on mute.
Sorry, Chair, struggling with my mute button. Emma.
Thank you. Councillor Deb Edwards.
Present.
Councillor Claire Hall has given apologies. Councillor Peter James.
Present.
Councillor Jones.
Present.
Councillor Gareth Jones has given apologies. Councillor Rena Kenyon Wade.
Present.
Councillor Carl Lewis.
Present.
Councillor Jeff Morgan.
Present.
Councillor Pugh.
Present.
Councillor Edwin Roderick.
Present.
Councillor Elwyn Vaughan.
Emma.
Councillor Donald Wilkin has given apologies, and Councillor Hugh Williams.
Emma.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Carol. We are still having a bit of feedback. We'll just quietly carry on and see how things progress. So item number 2, moving swiftly on, minutes of the previous meeting to authorise the chair to sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of February 2025 as a correct record. So I'm looking for a proposer. Thank you, Councillor Elwyn, and a seconder for accuracy, please. So, thank you, Councillor Edwin. I propose everyone happy, nothing to report. Good, can't see any hands. So item number 3, declarations of interest. To receive any declarations of interest from members relating to items to be considered on the agenda. Councillor Adrian.
Yes, Chair. Last one, 250235 AGR. Related to the applicant.
Thank you very much. I also would like to declare under 4.2 24/1190 FUL. I know the applicants well, so I will be leaving the chair and Councillor Adrian will take charge and I'll leave the room. Nobody else, I don't believe. B, to receive members' requests that a record be made of their membership of town or community councils where discussions have taken place of matters for the consideration of this committee. No. To receive declarations from members of the committee that they will be acting as a local representative in respect of an individual application being considered by the committee. I don't believe so. And finally, to note the details of members of the county council who are not members of the committee who will be acting as a local representative in respect of an individual application being considered by the committee. So, Councillor Aled Davis. Councillor Aled Davis will be acting, I believe, under item 4.2. So thank you, Aled, for that declaration.
Thank you, Chair.
Before we move on to the applications before us, a supplementary pack was sent out last night. Can I ask that all members have had an opportunity to read it? I can see people nodding in the chamber. Everyone at home, I take it by your silence, you've all had an opportunity to read. Yes. Councillor Carl, I see you have to leave at 11:30. Thank you for that. Good. No one stating that they've not had an opportunity. So we'll leave it there. Right, first application, Councillor Agent. Please, yeah. You come up here and I'll leave the room.
Right, moving on, our first application is 24-1190-full. But before we discuss that, Rachel Moore has a statement to make, please, Rachel.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. To make members aware, given the nature of the application before you, as the solicitor, I confirm I have reviewed the file and it has been processed normally. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, 24-1190-full demolition of existing property, placement of a new build dwelling, including solar panels, installation of treatment plant, and all other associated works. We have two speakers for this application. The applicants, Mr. and Mrs. Oakley, and Councillor Allard, who will be speaking as a local representative. Leading us in this application is Richard Edwards. So over to you, Richard. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Okay, so the application site is located within the Lansdowne Fried Community Council area, situated in the open countryside and outside of any settlement development boundary. The site features a modest attached two-storey, two-bedroom red brick dwelling within a residential curtilage surrounded by agricultural land. So the slide here, you can see the zoomed out location identified by the yellow arrow. And this is the existing block plan of the existing dwelling. Access is via a private track of the A495 County Highway, approximately 125 metres northwest of the site. It's nearby the Vyrnwy Valley Lodges Holiday Park and Cross Keys Inn, which is located to the north along the A495, with the river Vyrnwy located beyond agricultural land towards the east. As mentioned, consent is sought for the demolition of the existing dwelling and its replacement with a new build dwelling, including solar panels, installation of a new foul treatment plant, and all associated works. So as referenced on the screen, the existing block plan of the existing dwelling. This slide here identifies the block plan of the proposed replacement dwelling. I'll just go to the next slide, which references the principal policy of consideration in regards to acceptability of the nature of the proposed development. This is policy H9 of local development plan, which relates to replacement dwellings. I'll leave this on screen for a moment just so you can review the wording. In relation to criterion 1, we acknowledge that the existing dwelling has not been abandoned and clearly remains recognisable as a permanent dwelling. So we are satisfied that criterion 1 of policy H9 is acceptable and has been satisfied. It is a stepwise approach, so we also need to consider criterion 2 of policy H9. I'll just read it out So the proposal shall not result in the loss of a building of special architectural or historic interest or local vernacular character. Where this is the case, proposals will only be permitted where the building is proven to be beyond realistic repair. So it's kind of split into 2 points in regards to criterion 2. The first sentence is in relation to local vernacular character of the existing dwelling. I'll just go to the next slide. We can see the existing plans of the existing dwelling. Let's leave those there for a second so you can consider those. Next slide gives an indication of the existing dwelling present on site, proposed to be replaced. So in regards to local vernacular interest, the application has been consulted on by the Built Heritage Officer, who has also conducted a site visit and evaluated the existing dwelling, confirming its historic interest and local vernacular character, which is detailed in the comments dated the 31st of October 2024, referenced within the committee report. The application has also been consulted on by HENEB, and HENEB's assessments aligns with this, recognising the dwelling's architectural interest and being of at least local vernacular character also. The property is identified as a modest Georgian agricultural workers' cottage built in local Montgomeryshire style using red brick. Despite some modification over the years and a small side extension, these changes have not significantly harmed the property's character, leaving its floor plan and external materials largely intact. Thus, the property is considered an important and rare survivor of its type. Considering the evaluations of both the Built Heritage Officer and HENEB, the building is deemed to have local vernacular character and historic interest. Consequently, the proposal is subject to criterion 2, which presumes against its replacement, given its local vernacular character. I'll just go back to the policy. So the second part of criterion 2, where this is the case, proposals will only be permitted where the building is proven to be beyond realistic repair. At the time of the submission, the plan application lacked structural or financial evidence proving the existing historic building was beyond realistic repair. Typically, a detailed structural survey and cost calculations are expected to justify replacement proposals. Officers noted insufficient supporting information to explore alternatives like extensions as required by policy H9 has been undertaken. 2 non-invasive surveys were commissioned post-submission. The surveys are considered to lack detailed condition assessment and costings, failing to prove the need for demolition. The second survey identified local movement in the front wall due to roof spread, recommending remedial repairs. It is also noted the need for flat roof renewal and general renovation, estimating costs in the region of 150,000. However, some costs detailed in a breakdown were deemed to be general maintenance rather than necessary repairs. Policy H9 requires proof that the existing dwelling is beyond realistic repair. Property valuations have been undertaken and submitted in support of the application. However, officers concluded that sufficient repairs and renovations could be made without significant loss of the building's historic value. It's therefore considered the proposal has failed to demonstrate the dwelling was beyond realistic repair, with identified works being more about renovation. Thus, the development would result in an unacceptable loss of a historic building contrary to policy H9. So, officers' assessment is that criterion 2 has not been satisfied in respect of policy H9. The third criterion, as referenced on screen, the replacement dwelling shall be located within or adjacent to the footprint of the former habitable dwelling and reflect the form, size, and scale of the former habitable dwelling, unless there are demonstrable planning advantages to be gained from deviating from the former dwelling's orientation, position, and size. Respect or enhance the design of the original dwelling and those of the surrounding properties in the locality. So the proposed development has been evaluated in accordance with policy DM13 of local development plans as well, which outlines general design requirements for development proposals. Criterion 3 requires that replacement dwellings should be located within or adjacent to existing footprint and reflect the form, size and scale of the existing dwelling unless clear plan advantages to deviate from this are identified. The existing dwelling is a modest 2-storey, 2-bedroom red brick property with a small single-storey extension measuring approximately 12.6 metres by 4.6 metres with a footprint of 54 square metres. There's a roof ridge height of approximately 6 metres. The proposed replacement dwelling is 3-storey, 4-bedroom property measuring 15.2 metres by 10.5 with a footprint of 120 square metres and a ridge height of 10 metres, including the sunken basement level of the dwelling also. I'll just go to this is the existing photos and the proposed plans of the proposed replacement dwelling. Here is the floor plans and a representation of the finished dwelling being proposed. Officers have compared the size and scale of the proposed dwelling to the existing one, finding the replacement would be more than double the footprint and triple the total build area and internal floor space. Criterion 3 requires a replacement to respect the size, scale and form of the existing dwelling, which the proposed measurements do not. The proposed dwelling has been relocated and reorientated within the curtilage, with only a small part of the existing footprint and the principal facade now facing north. This resiting is stated to maximise solar gain, but it's considered this could be achieved while retaining the current form and arrangement on site. Criterion 3 also requires a design to respect the appearance of the existing dwelling. The current dwelling is red brick, while the replacement design uses K-render, timber, and which contrasts with the local red brick character. The contemporary design introduces new elements not influenced by the existing dwelling or the Welsh local vernacular style. Therefore, in consideration of policy H9, officers do not consider that principal development has been established. After reviewing the submitted information, it's deemed that the proposed development fails in respect of Criterion 2 and Criterion 3, and therefore the proposal is not supported by LDP policy H9. That's in respect to the principle of development. All other considerations of the application are deemed to be acceptable. Highways haven't objected to the highway access. Ecology is considered to be acceptable, subject to appropriate conditions, along with drainage. Those matters, as I said, could be acceptable, subject to appropriate conditions. However, as the principle of development is considered not to be acceptable in respect of policy H9, officer's recommendation is therefore one of refusal to committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Can I now call upon Mr. and Mrs. Oakley first? Sorry, Alan. Sorry, Carol's reminded me, 'tis Alan first, sorry.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to address the committee this morning. Can I also thank the committee members who've turned up in the chamber today, and also those online. I'm here as local representative, and I'm here in full support of this application. One I believe should Power should be proud to approve. I have been a county councillor for almost 17 years, and in those 17 years, I've only ever spoken at planning committee 2 or 3 times, because I think that our planning officers get things right most of the time, and it is seldom that I disagree with officer recommendation. On the rare occasions where I have made representations to planning committee, it has always been in support of the next generation who want to build a sustainable home for their family, for their future family, for a home to grow into. The applicants, Kate and Charlie Oakley, are that next generation, born and raised in the Llansantffraid community. We often hear in various council committees that one of our greatest challenges is the demographic change. Powys is getting older and quickly so. Building homes for the next generation is one of the best ways to meet the challenge. The applicants are not developers building executive homes. They are local people deeply rooted in this land and its community. I have visited the property myself, and I just wish that the committee members could see the site themselves as well. I know it's not possible, but when I visit the site, it is immediately apparent that the building is not fit for a young family. It is tiny, with one bedroom and a box room upstairs. I'm not surprised that the last occupier left this cottage. The single skins construction has been knocked around in extensive makeovers in the 70s and 80s, and the building is beyond realistic repair, with a little and only a little of the original structure remaining. Throughout this process, the applicants, Kate and Charlie, have submitted professional reports referencing relevant precedent and offered compromise in the hope of reaching a quicker conclusion. I am pleased that the update has been circulated by the applicants, as there was an opportunity to correct a number of errors in the officer's report. And I wish I had enough time to go through line by line of what Richard's presentation was. But there are inaccuracies in that report. They're inaccurate historical facts. The existing building is not vernacular to the area. Restoration is not economically viable. Size and scale, the report is inaccurate. The visible footprint is just under 3 meters longer and about 4 foot higher of this tiny old structure, of the tiny existing structure. And the application is policy compliant. The application is not speculative. It replaces a structurally compromised building with a well-designed, sustainable home that reflects local character and the surrounding properties, respects and enhances the footprint and improves access and safety. The design also incorporates a basement to minimize the visual impact, showing care and consideration for the site and its setting. The house will appear smaller from the public highway than the total footprint suggests. Chartered surveyors and a building builder both conclude that the renovation is not financially viable. And the evidence is in your pack. That expert advice has been overlooked in favour of more subjective commentary. Yet, if repair is not viable or realistic, the reality is, if this application is refused, it would leave the site in continuing decline, with a deteriorating, uninhabitable structure that serves no practical purpose. The building is not listed, is not listable, and it has been significantly altered over time. And I have to ask, where are the remaining architectural or historical features that justify preservation over clear planning benefit for sustainable, future-proofed home? The replacement dwelling is, in this case, is policy compliant and offers demonstrable planning benefits, both in terms of the building's future and long-term sustainability of the site. There have been no community objections to this application. The community is in clear support. This proposal aligns with the requirement and intent of policy H9 and is consistent with the similar applications already approved across Powys. Precedent supports what is being proposed here, and the level of support. A couple more lines, Chair. Apologies. President supports what has been proposed here, and the level of supporting evidence submitted is significant. This is a chance to support young, committed local people who want to build a future in the place that they call home. I urge you to support these applications on the basis of policy, precedent and principle, and I hope you can support it. Diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd, and thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Now I can ask Mr. and Mrs. Oakley to come up and speak. Thank you. When you're ready, you have 5 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Kate Oakley, and I'm here with my husband, Charlie. We've both lived in Llansantffraid our whole lives. This application is about building our forever home, a home we've dreamed about for years. But I recognise this is a policy-led process and not an emotional one. So while our personal connection explains our motivation, I'm here today to focus on facts and policy. This proposal aligns with policy H9, its intended purpose and how it's been applied in practice. The building is not listed, not listable, and has been significantly altered over time. It's deteriorating with limited structural integrity and little resemblance to its original form. The Heritage Report includes errors and unverified assumptions. It references listed building policy despite the property not being listed and includes claims such as dormer windows being raised when they were newly inserted in the 70s, clearly cutting through the original roofline. The structure has undergone major changes in layout, materials and features. We estimate at least 52% is not original. Minor features like a door hinge, a low-grade fireplace and damaged floorboards, none of which are structural, would not survive renovation. It does not meet CADI's Heritage Impact Assessment criteria, and when consulted, HENEB raised no objection to demolition, recommending only that the building be recorded. If value is deemed to exist, H9 requires consideration of realistic repair. We've submitted a detailed structural report from a chartered surveyor with conservation expertise, a second from another qualified surveyor, and since a builder's report. All conclude that the building is structurally compromised and that bringing it up to modern standards is economically unviable. We explored renovation ourselves, but the scale of work was extreme, particularly when considering funding. This building can't meet current standards for safety, energy efficiency, accessibility, or space. The new dwelling sits adjacent to the original footprint, improving fire safety, access, and passive solar gain by an estimated 10 to 20%. The current boundary and access runs along an active agricultural field with heavy machinery operating less than a metre from the house. The revised layout is safer and more practical with no compromise to rural character. The sizing differs from the officer's report. The existing is 71.26 metres squared. The proposed is 214.7 metres squared. 45 metres squared of that is underground. The increase aligns with precedent and it reflects the needs of modern living and it removes the need for future extensions. The house sits 140 metres from the A495, with the land dropping 8 metres below road level. Hedgerows and trees ensure minimal visual impact. The existing house is 12 metres long, the proposed is 14.8. Materials include timber cladding, Welsh stone and an off-white render, all chosen to reflect the character of surrounding properties. It remains a single dwelling in a rural setting. Both designs feature single-storey west-face projections. The existing has dormers, the proposed has gablets, maintaining the roof articulation. It is misleading to describe the proposal as a 3-storey dwelling. The basement is part sunken and it's not typically considered a full storey in planning terms. This proposal brings clear planning benefits. A sustainable, energy-efficient design with solar gain and reduced energy demand, supporting policy DM13. Inclusive, future-proofed housing, designed to lifetime homes and wheelchair housing design guide standards, aligned with TAN 12, Planning Policy Wales and the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. Improved site safety and function with safer access, clearer margins and no need for outbuildings. The movement from the boundary is justified as its current position provides inadequate fire separation, being only 80 centimetres from the boundary hedge. It offers an increase of scale appropriate to modern living, reducing the need for future development. This is a home for life. There's a biodiversity net gain and there's minimal landscape impact thanks to its orientation, natural screening, topography and modest above ground massing. You're seeing computer-generated photos on your screen, but it will take its place and fit the surrounding area. The rear elevation isn't visible and the front remains discreet. We've engaged fully with the process and provided professional evidence and precedent applications throughout. We've never received constructive feedback, only suggestions to withdraw. We met with officers to ask what we could do to help reach a positive conclusion. We stood by our arguments for replacement dwelling and offered to change the proposed materials to brick. We also asked for clearer guidance at that stage, but did not receive any. We are lifelong locals who want to remain rooted here and bring this site back into use as a cared-for home. We believe this application complies with policy H9 and offers a strong positive outcome for both the site and the wider area. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Right, members, let's give you a minute to sit down again. I think the main topic we have to discuss and debate is whether this current house is uneconomical and realistic to repair. So I turn it over to members for discussion and debate. Thank you very much. Yes, first hands up is Councillor Karina Kenyon-Wade.
Hello, thanks very much, Chair. I'm going to be voting with the officer's recommendation today because this is an historic building which is not beyond repair. I live in a similar house myself. It's taken me, I've got building skills. I've got a background in line mortar repairs on historic buildings. My husband has building skills. We've been able to do up the house where I live over decades. But this house can find a future and much cheaper than the 150,000 suggested. It's part of the landscape, and so I'll be voting with the officer's recommendations to refuse. Thank you.
Thank you, Karina, for your comments. Next is Councillor Elwyn Vaughan. Elwyn?
Diolch, Cadeirydd. Naturally, with such applications, there are a number of factors we have to consider. I think it was useful, the extra information we actually received yesterday. And buildings' lives, as we humans change and evolve over time, and expectations and what is needed these days perhaps don't concur with what was expected perhaps 100 years or 200 years ago. And I think we've got to look at this as a whole. There's obvious, it's a very small building, small cottage. There are reports of fundamental structural issues and cost in relation to that. But also what strikes me is the wider sustainability, environmental sustainability issues and expectations these days. And there was a reference, for instance, the energy gain of the new building, obviously be much higher insulation standard. And those are also quite important. But also what strikes me is I'm well aware of similar situations, a place called Maesperthi in Penegoes, which was only last couple of years, a similar situation, farmhouse there, which was taken down and a new built house in its place. And a few years previously, there's another one at Pontyniad on the junction towards Meifod there in a similar situation. So it's not the first time by a long shot. Well, the other thing that strikes me are Heneb's comments. Actually, they don't oppose the demolition. What they do is want a detailed recording of the current structures and its history. And at the end of the day, it is not listed and it is not in a conservation area. And as Cadw rightly says, we need to avoid ad hoc policy decisions. And therefore, overall, I do think it will be an expensive cost to bring it up to current expectations in sustainability and in practical use. And you have to weigh that up. And that's why I will be suggesting that we approve the actual application in due course.
Thank you, Councillor Elwyn. Next we have Councillor Jeff Morgan. Jeff?
Hi, everybody. Yeah, well, Elwyn stole on my thunder there. I'm thinking along the same lines. I know we may well be setting a precedent here if we do this, voting against the officer's recommendation, but that's a precedent I can live with. Why can't these youngsters have a nice house that's insulated up, doesn't cost a fortune to keep? So I'll be voting, I'm afraid, against the officer's recommendations today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jeff. Next we have Councillor Hugh Williams. Hugh?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Is the heritage officer available to us today? Right, could we have your view on what you've heard and you know, expand on what you've written?
Well, HENEB probably wouldn't object. You know, that's not their role to object. It's their role to offer recording. You know, if it's the officer's decision ultimately. So they're just recommending if there needs to be a recording. It would be the same with the Royal Commission. That they've asked for recording would mean that it's met the criteria for a vernacular building or a building of historic interest. That's why they want a recording. So I just thought that that's worth getting that right. My other view is that I think that there are ways, you know, this is a brick building, and I personally would think that the policy is sound. I mean, when you think about it, there's no protection for historic buildings outside of conservation areas or that aren't listed, but that makes up the whole character of the rural area. So this policy is all that protects historic buildings and the landscape, which make up the character of rural Powys. And it only protects a very small number of those, really. And we're not saying we're against development here. We're not against extension or that sort of thing, or discussion. It's just that within the lifetime of this application, it was felt that that couldn't be reached. So that's why the recommendation is for you as it is.
Are you satisfied with that, Hugh?
I am. I've heard what's been said, and I will listen to the rest of the debate. But there's also the issue of that the footprint, the square meterage of the new proposed building is much larger than the existing building, and that is unusual. But I will ask if that is the case. And the change of the location, if you like, it's been changed. It's in the report, and it is a good report. I understand that. But it is going away from a policy and guidance that we've used before in a sort of rural area.
Every application is determined case by case based on its plan and merits. So this is the application before us. This is what we're considering. Policy H9 on the screen does, criterion 3 does relate to the scale, form and size of the dwelling. We're not rigid in that approach. We do apply flexibility because we understand that dwellings can benefit from PD rights. So we're not saying it has to be exactly the same footprint and scale of what was there. We do allow slight changes from that, deviations. We have allowed replacements to be slightly deviated off the footprint of the existing if there is planning benefits, or it may there may be reasons why it just needs to be reorientated slightly. But this application, it considers that the form, size and scale is considerably more than what is existing. We have allowed slight increases on other replacement dwellings, but I don't feel it's been to the degree in which this application proposes, and that's why we don't consider it's satisfying criterion 3 given what this proposal is for this application.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Next we have Councillor Angela Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. I'm really torn on this one. I can see the plans for the new build are absolutely beautiful. It really is a stunning house, and all the environmental benefits of it there are well recorded. And I can see the little red brick cottage that's there is not suitable for modern living. And there are many examples across the countryside where these tiny little cottages are left to rack and ruin and falling down. So it would be nice to see this done up, but I'm really torn The heritage officer, I mean, I'll be honest, I disagree with him really, because I do wonder if he's got a slightly romanticised idea of living in these old-fashioned buildings, and perhaps we'd all be living in Castell Henllys if there was one around. And we do need to make our rural buildings. Here in Powys, we've a lot of Victorian builds that need to be renovated and made fit for modern living, and that's proving to be difficult if we're to keep everything as it is. But I do wonder if there isn't some middle ground, and could there not have been a way? I wonder why the applicants didn't explore an extension of the current cottage. There are lots of examples across the county where these tiny cottages have been doubled in size with extensions to the sides and to the rear. And there isn't really anything in the report that gives any indication of whether that was explored or not. And the other issue I have, the beautiful new house is that. I mean, it is, you know, well done, the designers, it really is stunning. But it gives no nod at all to the previous building. And I just wonder whether it had some red brick or some sort of design feature that gave some reference to the historical building before it. Like I say, at this moment in time, Chair, I'm really torn. I don't know. I keep referring back to H9, and I'm not sure I'm convinced one way or the other whether this meets that. So I'll carry on listening in, but really torn.
Thank you, Councillor Angela. Could I just ask one point, Richard? There's been mention of permitted development with the existing house. I can see from the map, it's very close to the boundary. Doesn't that limit to what they can do there?
Yeah, it'd have to be within the domestic curtilage. So yeah, there may be limitations in respect of pre-app. Like the application has been in. I know no pre-app discussions were held prior to the submission of any application, where within that process we were given opinion in respect of acceptability of a replacement dwelling scale, form, size, whether or not it's any vernacular character to it. The application has been discussed internally with agents and relevant officers and other officers within planning. It has been suggested about a more modest extension to the existing proposal to retain more or less the existing dwelling, but to allow maybe extensions and that on it. That would be seen a more favourable option. But that information hasn't come forward in any relevant way. Like this is the proposal that has been submitted. Information that was considered previously didn't consider to address policy any different than where we are now, really.
Okay, I understand that, but isn't it difficult for the applicants to develop that original house? Because if you're saying we need to protect the brickwork, well, they probably can't come out the front. If it's right up against the boundary, they can't go at the back. So what can they do to make it to their standard?
Well, that's where like engaging with the planning authority through pre-app and that we can help like discuss with them proposal advice. We can give advice on the amendments. There could be options to like outside the plan, like not in this application, but a small change of use of agricultural land to allow domestic curtilage to the rear. They could submit an application to seek an extension from it. There is options available other than this application that is submitted, and like we do engage, we would be happy to engage through pre-app. We have had meetings discussing alternative proposals, but this is the application before us now, and that's what we're considering.
Right, thank you, Richard. That's great. Next we have Councillor Carl Lewis who wants to speak. Carl?
Thank you, Chair. Have we got any examples of this vernacular design? Because in the documents it says vernacular design of Wales. Well, there's many different examples of buildings within Wales. So is there anything specific to that particular area from that property that we need to protect? Because at the end of the day, I just see it as a handmade brick house, and those brick houses are normally made of stone originally. So that house has already told a story. And where I'm going with this, Chair, if you allow me, is there any scope to, let's say now we do grant planning permission, is there any scope to bring some of those features of that house, the brick, and incorporate that into this design, so therefore the house in a way is continuing its story? Is there any way we could do that, and that would satisfy our built heritage officer?
Good point, Carl, but I don't know who could answer that question. Richard, do you want to?
We could potentially condition materials. Some of the plans may reference the materials proposed. Yeah, we could seek a condition in respect of materials, so they have to submit to us the details of them prior to their first use within the development. But
because Chair, we have to look at a pragmatic view on this. That house is, for modern living, bringing up a family, it is not suitable. It is miles too small. It's fine if there's just a couple in there, but if you have plans for a family, I don't know Councillor Gwynford's family, but I imagine, that the idea is, if not children now, maybe children in the future. So a family may come along there, or already is, I don't know. And for modern living, I would say a small cottage like that, for all the, the trappings that we have now in modern life, is just not big enough. And, we want to protect our heritage, don't we? And I think that might be a way forward, that this committee, along with officers, could allow this to continue. I'm not so bothered about size of floor area. I think we need to get away from that. It's a lovely house, as Councillor Angela has already stated. And, we should be encouraging young people, as Councillor Allard has already said in his statement, to stay in their area. And I'm 100% behind this. So when the time comes, Chair, I'm happy to vote for this application.
Thank you, Carl. And I was getting nods in the room about your suggestions for suggesting features into the new development if it goes through. So next we got Councillor Gareth Pugh. Gareth?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Could I just ask the officer to bring back up the picture of the new build? Have you got the one there? That's the one. Yeah, lovely building, as has been mentioned and referred to. I thought the local member made a lot of sense. If you listened word for word what he said, spoke very passionate about this application and really took on board what he said. Likewise, the applicant. In this report, it says the character of the existing dwelling is of a small and modest Georgian workers' cottage. Well, I would suggest in this day and age that there is no requirement for a small, modern Georgian workers' cottage. I hear what the build heritage officer says, because that's what he lives, eats and breathes. But we have got to look at the next generation and the future families coming through. And I can really, really appreciate that this would not be practical to renovate. I've done renovations, I'm doing renovations, and I would not like to start on that building to bring it up to any kind of building regs or anything. The one sentence I like that I've heard today, and I'm a big supporter of it, this is going to be a home for life. Well, how lovely. And they should be given the chance to build a home for life. We should encourage the next generation, the youngsters coming through. A lot of these buildings are getting built across the border, and it's about time Powys woke up and got up to speed with this sort of thing. So I'm 100% behind this. So when you're ready, I would support this application, and I want to recommend approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gareth. I have no more hands up, so Councillor Edwin Roderick. Edwin?
Okay, ladies. Yes, thank you, Chair. One question I would like to ask to see if it has been clarified. In the under the NRW, there was it was showing discharging of the effluent to a water course. Has that been clarified? I've read on and it's showing it has gone to ground discharge after, but am I reading it correctly?
There's a treatment plant
Yeah.
mentioned, so that covers it probably, is it, Richard?
Yeah, so that's correct. So the consultees have considered it fully along with environmental protection.
So it has gone to a proper treatment plant.
Yeah, let me just.
Okay, yeah. Going on from there, I think we see today the cost of renovating. It is quite often cheaper on a new build. And with that, of course, you get the benefits of insulation, running costs, and our standards move on in society, I believe. Realistic repair, I think we've really got to sum it up and we look at it, and at the end of the day, it's good to see that the house here has been done. We quite often get so much planning in front of us these days with new houses where they look like Legoland lookalikes, to be perfectly blunt with you. And I also sit on the Banner Brycheiniog, and I've tried to bring this forward. We must encourage the developers to produce a different type of design, not everything the same, because we get houses, especially in estates, where if somebody moved in there late at night, he wouldn't know which is his own. But this is a beautiful design house. And looking at the existing house that was there, to just coin a phrase, you can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear, can you? At the end of the day. So I'm more than happy to support that this proposal goes forward, Chair.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Edwin. Members, I think I'm looking for a proposal now, please.
Well, Chair, I think I did.
Yeah, do it now.
But I would add that
sorry.
reference is made to materials and things, and perhaps I would suggest that we include that also, but that be left then to a formal agreement, a discussion between the agents and applicants and the officers.
Thank you, Councillor Elwyn. Anyone want to?
Chair, I thought I proposed this.
So we just need clarification what the reasons are for overturning those two reasons for refusal, if they just clarify that.
Yes, we need to clarify plan reasons for overturning the.
Well, the cost of making the current structure into a viable modern entity, in terms of practical monetary cost, but also in environmental cost, and I think the enhanced environmental benefits and sustainability of a new building.
Thank you. I think that suffices.
There is the second reason for refusal on scale design. So just a statement to say you're happy with that, to be honest.
Yeah, well, we're happy and content with the scale. Some of it is underground, but also the orientation is really to maximise the light benefit and obviously the sustainability benefits in light to that.
Thank you very much. Anybody want to second?
I'll second that, Chair.
We've got to, I'll take Edwin. You put your hand up here. Thank you very much, Edwin. So
Yourself to approve the conditions.
Yep.
Prior to issuing.
Right.
Just clarify.
That's fine.
And so it has to be subject to delegation of the conditions.
Yes.
Or is it the
It has to be subject to delegated powers to the chair and vice chair and the officers.
Yeah, myself.
Yes, I accepted that.
Right, thank you. So do we go to a vote now? Members will be going to a vote. It will appear in your chat box, I believe. There it is. I'll take it you're voting for, Edwin, because you seconded it. We got all votes in, Cal, or some missing? Thank you.
Councillor Edwin, your vote hasn't come through on the system, but you seconded, so you're for, yes? Okay, that's fine, thank you. So, Chair, 13 members eligible to vote. 11 voted for, 2 against, and no abstentions. And Councillor Hugh, you wanted your vote, which is against, to be recorded. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Cal. Thank you, members. So that concludes the application. I now hand over back to Gareth, if somebody can ask him in.
Members, it's been suggested that we have a 5-minute break now until the next one. Is that your wish? Yes. So it's now 11 o'clock, so 5 past, we'll come back in. Thank you. Yeah, pal, Christ and all, hopefully everyone's back, so we'll move on with the agenda. So Carol, would you be so kind, please, to the roll call?
Thank you, Chair. So Gareth D. Jones.
Yeah, I'm
Councillor Adrian Jones.
Present.
Councillor Tom Colbert.
Present.
Councillor Angela Davis.
Emma.
Councillor Deb Edwards.
Present.
Councillor Peter James.
Present.
Councillor Ed Jones.
Present.
Councillor Karina Kenyon Wade.
Present.
Councillor Carl Lewis. Councillor Carl.
did say in the chat that he'd have to leave at past, whether he's taken the decision to go
He's-
now, possibly.
Yeah, he's still showing, but Councillor Jeff Morgan,
Yeah.
Councillor Gareth Pugh,
Present.
Councillor Edwin Roderick, Councillor Elwyn Vaughan,
Emma.
and Councillor Hugh Williams.
Emma.
Right, Councillor Carl is still showing on the system. Councillor Carl? We'll have to not include him.
If he comes in.
I won't include him in the vote.
Thank you, Carol.
Yeah.
Before we move on, I'd like to thank Councillor Adrian for taking the chair on the previous application. Thank you very much. And it was remiss of me before not to welcome the officers here as well this morning. Welcome to you all. And unfortunately, Peter Morris, I'm sure hasn't gone unnoticed, is not with us today. Unfortunately, not enjoying the best of health at the moment. And I'm sure as a committee and everything, we send our best wishes to him for a speedy recovery. I'm sure, knowing Peter, he's at home watching this now as we're going along. So all the best to you, Peter. Right, moving on.
Apologies, Chair. As Carl, I was just out of the room at the time when you called the roll call, so yeah, I'm back in. Sorry.
That's fine, Carl. Thank you. We haven't started yet. So yeah, members, we are now moving on to application 24/1422/FUL, construction of an offline pond, associated landscaping and enabling works. Rachel, would you be so kind as to talk us through the legalities?
Thank you, Chair. Members, given the reason for committee determination of this application before you, I confirm I have reviewed the file and it has been processed normally. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rachel. Good. Another officer taking us through this is Kate. So Kate, the floor's all yours. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members and members of the public. So the application is for the construction of an offline pond, associated landscaping and enabling works, land to the north of Coppice Lane, Pool Quay. This slide shows the aerial view of the site. Just to inform members before I start, I have received an additional representation overnight regarding concern over whether the development will attract visitors and whether that will cause parking problems along Coppice Lane and affect a farming operation near the site through inappropriate parking. There was also a request to address committee members this morning, but unfortunately that request was received too late in accordance with the planning protocol. So just to let you know, there has been additional representation received. Right, on to the presentation. The application site is shown on the aerial view as marked by the yellow arrow on screen. The Montgomery Canal is labelled by words adjacent to the northern boundary of the site, also Coppice Lane, where the site will be accessed from after construction is shown on screen. Townhouse Lane, which will be used for construction traffic, is located to the north of the canal. It's unnamed on the slide. The A483 trunk road is shown on the right-hand side of the slide. Pool Quay, the settlement of Pool Quay, is located to the south along the A483 trunk road. The site slopes down to the canal from Coppice Lane. The majority of the surrounding area, as you can see, is predominantly agricultural, with residential properties and farmsteads scattered throughout. This slide shows the location plan. The application site's edged in red As you can see, the site extends across 3 fields as shown by the red line. It's proposed to construct a pond, which involves excavation of an open body of water with an approximate area of 1.2 hectares. The pond would have an inlet and an outlet structure, which would be concrete, majority of it being below ground to allow maintenance vessels to access the canal. The development is supported in principle by LDP policy TD3 in terms of connection with the wider restoration of the Montgomery Canal, which the policy supports, and as can be seen from the public support received for the development as set out in the report. Slide 3, this shows the general arrangement proposed. The maximum depth of the pond would be 1.5 metres. Landscaping bunds are to be formed. The slide also shows the public right-of-way route through a sort of causeway in the left-hand side of the pond in the western side of the slide. The oak tree would be retained in the sort of central part of the site, with a nice mature oak tree. This slide shows the cross sections, the profile of the water body, the maximum extent of each bund shown, areas of cut and fill. This slide shows the channel and bridge details. So the right of way would be there would be a bridge to cross through the water body just to retain that public right of way through the site. This is the green infrastructure landscaping plan. There is existing vegetation around the edge of the site which will be retained, as well as the mature oak tree, as I've already outlined, in the centre of the site. There's proposed planting around the edge of the site. Other biodiversity enhancements include bird and bat boxes. The parking space for the Canal and River Trust staff is indicated by a yellow flower sort of star symbol off the access track to Tanhouse Lane in the sort of bottom of the site, just adjacent to Coppice Lane. The public right of way going through the site is marked by the orange dashed line. This is looking towards the site. So here I'm taking a photograph from the other side of the canal, standing on the towpath, looking west towards the property known as Arasgabor. The site's on the other side of the canal in the left of the photograph. Again, photograph taken looking southwest. You can see that the land slopes down to the canal, and nearby property shown in the right hand side of the photograph. Again, looking from the canal towpath, looking southwest, you might be able to see some orange netting in the distance there. That is actually, at the moment, there's water main diversion works taking place on site. So that's not the development taking place, that is water main diversion works. The land rises towards Coppice Lane, just beyond the, and there we go, there's the works going on again. The land rises from the canal towards Coppice Lane, and Coppice Lane's just beyond that white van in the photograph. This is the slide which looking towards Easterly Field, most easterly field, and Bank Farm. Again, the site's on the other side of the canal and extends across the 2 fields that you can see immediately in the forefront by the canal. This is just a bit further along the canal towpath, looking further closer to Bank Farm in the distance there. This is the access to Tanhouse. So this is Coppice Lane. The site is on the right hand side of the photograph here. You can just see the canal in the side. This is the access to Tanhouse. The property just in the distance there, where the parking space for Canal and River Trust staff would be located. So it'd be located just off the private track to Tanhouse. You can also see the site sloping down to the canal. Powys County Council Highway Authority have confirmed that the access has good visibility and the existing gates are sufficient distance to allow a longer vehicle to wait off the road whilst the gate is opened. This is just a closer view of that access off Coppice Lane. So this is the access that would be used post-construction. Construction works would take place from the northern Townhouse Lane. This is just looking back to the access from the other side. So you can just see that Coppice Lane is a typical Powys narrow lane with field access points along. So picking up the Town Council and the public concerns regarding inappropriate parking along Coppice Lane, potentially causing problems for farming operations. Given that the applicant has confirmed the development is not proposed to be a visitor attraction and that measures would be put in place to deter visitors, it is considered that traffic volume and type is unlikely to be significantly different to that experienced currently. The applicants have confirmed that car parking at the site is not considered appropriate and would likely encourage visitors and additional use, which is detailed in the report. Just to clarify, the access to the farming enterprise in question is understood to be off this Coppice Lane. This is the constraints map. The site's marked by a red cross. The Montgomery Canal Special Area of Conservation, Site of Special Scientific Interest, is shown hatched red over the blue. The qualifying features of the SAC is Luronium natans, which is a water floating plantain. The development aims to create open water habitat to create habitats favourable to support rare and submerged aquatic species, including Luronium natans. The public right-of-way is shown dashed black, 214241, travelling through the site. As you can see, it doesn't link to the canal towpath. You'd have to jump across the canal to get to the towpath, and it doesn't readily connect to other rights-of-way in the area. So hence, it's not expected that there will be a significant increase in visitor numbers to the site. Coppice Lane's marked by the pink line, and Townhouse Lane is to the north across the canal. In terms of flood risk from rivers, that is denoted by the blue shading in the northwestern area. A flood consequence assessment supports the application, which has altered one of the bunds outside the historic flood event area, and NRW have reviewed and confirmed there's no objection in terms of flood risk grounds. Strip and pink and purple going through the site indicates surface water flood risk area in the western part of the site. And again, the Land Drainage Department have provided advice that the footbridge should be designed so as not to impede flow. Otherwise, pre-application discussions have taken place in respect of a SAB application, and it's been confirmed that the surface water drainage strategy is sound. Neighbouring residential properties referred to in the report are shown on this slide. So you can see them indicated by green circles. There's Townhouse and Aruscabor to the west, Bank Farm, Bank Cottage, the Quarry and Brython View to the southeast. Oaklands and Kingswood and the Alders are located to the north, to the north of the canal and across the Townhouse Lane. There will be some visual and landscape change both during the construction and post-construction, but the overall change is not considered to be acceptable in landscape and visual terms. In terms of ecology, the application has been thoroughly reviewed by Natural Resources Wales and the Council's ecologist, with an appropriate assessment having been carried out, which concludes that subject to mitigation, the development would not result in an adverse effect upon the Montgomery Canal, and NRW agree with that conclusion. In addition, the information submitted with the application and following the use conditions, the development would not result in negative impacts upon the Montgomery Canal's designation as a SSI. Members will note that a number of conditions have been recommended in relation to ecology, as recommended by NRW and the Council's ecologist. Therefore, in summary, the benefits of development are recognised in terms of connection with the wider restoration of the canal, which LDP policy TD3 supports. The public comments have been considered in terms of addressing the potential for visitors to access the site and park inappropriately. However, the Canal and River Trust have confirmed that the site will not be promoted as a visitor attraction. Otherwise, all material planning considerations have been addressed and found to be acceptable, and therefore, subject to the conditions and informatives set out in the officer's report, the recommendation is one of approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Members, over to yourselves. Councillor Elwyn as well.
Diolch. Thank you for the comprehensive report. Very detailed, I think. Congratulations. This is much wider and larger investment in the canal in the area, as we're all aware. And it is a special area, so as a SAC and SSI status. So it's good to have the positive reports from NRW and the county ecologist. I think the report, and as you mentioned, therefore has answered the concerns in terms of car parking in particular. And therefore I'm content with the contents and recommendation and ready to move when appropriate. Diolch.
Diolch, Elwyn. Anyone else wishing to? Councillor Carl, please.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to second Councillor Elwyn's proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carl. Anyone else wishing to speak? Councillor Edwin, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just as a matter of interest, actually, has restoration of the canal already started? Or?
No, it's likely that project will come forward in quite a number of years' time. Yeah, so no, it hasn't started as yet, but there is work going on with these sort of associated projects currently that's been subject to funding that's currently ongoing. So we've already approved a bridge at Carragova, a new bridge at Carragova, which is part of the project to facilitate restoration. And there's some other projects coming in the pipeline, but no, the actual restoration has not begun as yet.
Diolch, Councillor Edwin. Anyone else wishing to speak? If not, I can't see any hands. Carol, other hands, which has been proposed and seconded, proposed by Councillor Elwyn, seconded by Councillor Carl. We do go with offers a recommendation. So can we go to the vote, please? There we are, 4.3. It's in the chat box now. Okay. If anyone is having problems, please let us know. Councillor Edwin has indicated. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to vote, so close the electronic vote. Carol?
So Councillor Edwin, your vote? 4, thank you. So Chair, 14 members eligible to vote. 14 voted for, none against and no abstentions.
Good, thank you very much, Carol. So application number 24/1422/FUL has been passed as per officer recommendation. Thank you very much. Kate, good. Moving on.
I'll be leaving now, Chair. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you for your attendance this morning. Councillor Carl's leaving now, Carol. Right, moving on quickly. The next application before us is application 24/1206/FUL, conversion of a Baptist church into a residential dwelling. Members, you will be aware that we all received an email last night with a request for a deferral. So I will at this point ask Gemma, please, just to have a quick say, and members, for your input as well, please.
Thank you. Good morning, members. So yes, we are aware a request has been received to defer this application based on insufficient time being allowed for people to come forward to speak. Now, we are satisfied that officers had followed process in terms of notifying relevant parties. The protocol states that we have to be informed 3 clear working days before if anyone does wish to speak. Now, we had no representators, local community council or local member before that time saying they wish to speak. So unfortunately, in line with the protocol, that does mean that the applicant or agent doesn't have a right to respond. So it's just to clarify that we are satisfied that we have followed due process and in line with protocol in that instance. Thank you.
Thank you, Gemma. Members, are you content that we proceed with this following the information that that Gemma has given to us? I'm in your hands. I'm just looking for everyone's approval that we move on.
I'm happy, Chair.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Thank you very much, Gemma. Very good that we have application, as previously stated, 4.4 on our agenda, and the officer taking us through this is Luke. So Luke, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, members and everyone online. This application was called in by Councillor Les George, who is the local member for the ward. He's called it in regards to flooding and also the requirements from TAN 15. Unfortunately, he's not here today, but he is supportive of the scheme. So from the slide on the screen, the red cross annotates where the building is within Caesus. The green line shows the A470 trunk road. And if you can see my cursor, just to put it in context, really, the petrol station is there, and the public house, I think it's the Buck, is there. The development itself is within the Caesus Community Council area, and it's within the Caesus development boundary. From this slide, it shows an aerial view of the building. It is surrounded by residential properties. This slide, member, shows the most up-to-date flood maps that we have. This is the flood zone 3 for rivers, and it shows there in blue the most severe flood zone, which is number 3. And obviously the building is within the centre of that. Roughly the river is down to the south, slightly darker blue. These are further flood zones. Flood zone C1 is annotated there in green, and the blue is flood zone C2. Again, from this slide, shows the site location plan with the red outline showing the building there in black with the neighbouring properties and the grass area to the rear, which would be the garden area, if allowed. This plan shows the proposed site plan there with the building. It's proposed for 2 parking spaces to the side, and also then the existing hedgerows are annotated on there. Just from these next couple of slides, members, shows the current building. Some works have been undertaken already, I believe, but it's not retrospective. It's just that shows the front, which will remain as is, should this application be allowed. No changes are proposed to the front. This is to the side of the chapel. There's a little single-story extension there, which is proposed to be removed and replaced like for like, using similar materials, which is considered acceptable. Just to note as well, an ecological survey has been provided with this submission, and our ecologist has confirmed no objections. No protected species have been found within the property. Another photo here just showing the road which runs adjacent to the chapel. Just to note as well, given its proposed new use, there would be a decrease in users. There would be less issues in regards to parking with people, not as many people attending the building, should this be granted. This is a picture from the rear of the chapel. Again, further back, which shows the grounds to the rear, and then shows the surrounding properties. And then this is of the side looking out towards the rear gardens. Next, I bring to you the proposed plans. The front elevation, as previously said, will remain unchanged. However, it is proposed to raise the floor levels. Here is the side elevation. Again, this showing the extension which is to be removed and replaced. It also then shows there will be some, well, it is proposed that new skylights are installed together with solar panels on the roof. Additional enhancements of bat boxes are also proposed, and that would be acceptable in line with the biodiversity SPG. This is the other side of the building. Again, largely unchanged, but there will be new skylights. And again, there it does show where the new proposed floor levels are. There's an annotated there with the dashed lines. This is to the rear of the chapel. This will change, or is proposed to be changed by these new windows to improve the lighting into the building. We don't consider this would cause any loss of privacy, given the positioning of the neighbouring properties. Also, given that the side extension is pretty much like for like, there isn't considered to be a loss of light caused to any of the properties either. In regards to planning policy, DM15 is supportive of alternative uses if the original use is no longer viable. The building has been redundant from its former use for several years, and schemes such as this or alternative uses would be supported. In terms of the parking area, which is proposed to the side, we have had discussions internally and with the appointed agents. We've also had an objection to the parking area proposed, given that there are several graves within that area. And if consent was granted today, we would be looking not to allow that parking area in that location. Just to respect those. Furthermore, policy H1, which allows housing development proposals, is supportive of schemes such as this. However, on this occasion, us as officers, we do not consider this location to be acceptable or suitable, given its location within the flood zone. Just like to suggest to members to read, or they probably have done, the flooding part of my report. As per my previous slides, the development is located within the C1 flood zone. It's also located within the flood for rivers 3, which is the most up-to-date information. NRW have raised concerns with the proposal. They have not objected, given that the floor levels are to be raised. However, they have raised concerns, but they have said it's for the local authority to determine whether this location is suitable and compliant with TAN 15. As officers, we do recognise that given this is a conversion scheme, this will not make flooding within Caesus any worse than it is currently. We could also say that given the floor levels will be raised and given the consultee comments, anyone within the building would remain flood free. We've also had some comments from emergency planners who confirm that at this present time, there would be a means to escape. But obviously that cannot be guaranteed in 5, 10, 15, 20 and later in time. We do not consider the development in this location to be justifiable with TAN 15. As the development proposes highly vulnerable use in an area which is susceptible to flooding. This would be contrary to TAN 15. I would just like to note, members, really, there was additional information that was sent in to us on the 14th of February. This has been considered. This does not change our stance, as this is a highly vulnerable use within the flood zone. So we still remain unchanged in our stance. I'd just like to note as well, this is a resubmission of an application which was submitted early last year, and that was withdrawn on flooding grounds as well as ecological grounds. In fairness, the applicants did undertake pre-application advice, and again, our stance remains unchanged throughout the whole process. We do not believe that this development is acceptable within this flood zone. Therefore, Chair, my recommendation is one of refusal. The application proposes highly vulnerable development within the flood zone, and it would be contrary to planning policies DM5, DM6, and technical advice note TAN 15. Pass back to you, Chair, for any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, diolch. Thank you, Luke. Members, it's over to you, and the first I see to indicate is Councillor Edwin. Councillor Edwin, it's welcome.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. You referred to raising the floor level. What sort of height are you intending raising the floor level?
I believe it is 122 centimetres.
50. Yeah.
So, and as per comments by consultees, they have confirmed that should the floor level be raised, any inhabitants of the building would remain flood free.
Yeah.
But obviously the surrounding area could be flooded, in which case in time they may not be able to escape.
So if, shall we say, you're not supporting the development within of the existing chapel, realistically speaking, you would be looking to demolish.
Okay, so there are alternative uses within the same use class, within D1, which the building could be converted to and they wouldn't need planning permission. There are several uses, or they could apply for change of use, which has been suggested previously to, I know, a less vulnerable use, something like a cafe, shop. Those would be less vulnerable uses, or you know, a crash or a gallery or museum. There are quite a lot of uses which this could be used for. Granted its location.
There was an objection I could see with the proposed parking that is located over the top of several burial plots. And Richard III was found under a car park in Tesco's, wasn't he? Oh. Yeah, okay, thank you, Chair. I'll
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Edwin. Councillor Angela, please. Councillor Angela, you're on mute, I believe. There you go, you're off.
Sorry, Chair, I've got two screens and my cursor's always on the wrong one. So yeah, I want to explore this flooding issue because to my mind, the repurposing of an existing building that ceased to be useful in its original state surely is what we should be encouraging across the council. And this seems to be a really tastefully done design for a dwelling. And I'm really curious that our planner considers a creche where the building might be full of very young children to be a safer and better option than a dwelling. So having 30 or 40 toddlers during a flood session would be better. I find that quite bizarre, really. I appreciate this is in the flood zone of Caesws, but I have read here that on inspection, this particular area hasn't been flooded for years and that there is a bund, I understand, around Caesws to prevent flooding of the village itself that's been very successful. So a bit like Councillor Edwin, I'm genuinely curious as to what, if this isn't suitable for conversion for a dwelling and there are no oppositions to the actual conversion of the property itself, other than this potential flood risk, what are the options for all the properties around it? Are we suggesting that everybody move out of Caesws because it's in a flood plain? It actually does say in the report that on page 18, this would not expedite flooding issues. And there would be reduced parking impact because as a chapel, clearly there would have been a lot more cars. So can we explore that, please, with our planners?
Certainly. Thank you, Councillor Sanders. Who wishes to take up that point? Chairman?
I'll just come in quickly if that's okay. Just to clarify with the crash, it would be actually highly vulnerable development, so that wouldn't be supported in this location. They wouldn't need.
Thank you. Yeah, but I mean, our planner Luke did suggest that that might have been a better option, didn't he, just then?
Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify that.
So it wouldn't be a better option, no.
That is a use that would be permitted under the current use of the building. It's a very interesting application because we have had the two maps that Luke put up before us, very useful today, is that actually, given the most up-to-date recent data provided by National Resources Wales, they have actually upgraded the flooding risk for this location. So where previously it could have been justifiable, and that's obviously considering perhaps the flood defences in that location. Based on the most recent data from National Resources Wales, which is this flood zone 3, the risk has actually been upgraded in that location. Now, I just want to make it clearer to members that in TAN 15, it does make it very clear that in these locations, highly vulnerable development should not be supported. It is only if it's at a lesser vulnerability, lesser use or flooding zone, that is when then you could consider whether it's justifiable by meeting the tests. But in this instance, given the risk associated with the flood zone it is now located, it is very clear that TAN 15 says no highly vulnerable within this location.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Sanders, are you content with that?
Yeah, for now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Adrian, and then Councillor Deb, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, in my mind, I can understand it's TAN 15, but this isn't a development. There's a building there. And that's where I get the thing. Well, there's a building there. It's a change of use, I fully understand, but obviously you wouldn't build a house there now under these rules. So I'm tending to say, well, we can go with it. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adrian. Councillor Deb, please, then Councillor Gareth Pugh, then Councillor Tom.
Yeah, apologies, but Adrian's just said what I was going to suggest. The building is already there. And what I can see as the applicant is just trying to repurpose this building. And we're back to where we were in the first application we had, is that it's a local family looking to build in their local area. I mean, they're fully aware of the risks and within Jesus with the flooding. And that was my only thing from what Gemma's just said. It's just repurposing the building. But thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Deb. Councillor Gareth Pugh, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It seems to be the issue here being a highly vulnerable use within the floodplain. We have heard of our officer that perhaps there are other uses for it. Obviously, the crash wasn't a goer. Could I just ask our officer, just say, for instance, a cafe or a shop come there? How would you accommodate the parking?
Luke?
Thank you, Councillor Gareth. I mean, as previously stated, that would be a permitted change. We wouldn't be able to stop that if that was allowed in terms of a crash. Just in terms of the parking and in terms of there being a shop. At this present time, given its current use and the amount of people who could attend that site, you know, that we would see parking issues probably because this road can't accommodate, well, the road can't accommodate hundreds of cars, can it really? It hasn't got associated parking here. But you couldn't say with a potentially a shop there would be as many cars to that use if it was just a local shop.
How about a cafe? Like I would suggest that a cafe would be used, say, by passing traffic, say which would be in cars. Now, like, okay, you got a use there now, a lot of people can use it. I appreciate that, but churches are normally somewhere where local people would walk to, say, on a Sunday. I don't know because I don't go. But anyway, going back to a cafe, I think you'd have a problem with parking for a cafe.
Gemma, please.
I'll just come quickly in there. Obviously, we only have to consider the application before us, so we haven't appropriately considered cafe use in this location. However, I would say, and I think what Luke was trying to get across there was very much if we did have that proposal for us, we would have to consider the fallback position. And not only for a church, which is as it is currently, but anything within that use class that it could be used for, we would consider that fallback position. Now, all I would kind of say on that is, obviously I don't have figures in front of me, but I would say there could be quite a significant amount of traffic generated for such uses. So I can't envision that a use such as a cafe or a shop would have strong grounds for a reason for refusal on highways, especially given its location within Cassous, a large village allocated under the local development plan.
Thank you, Gemma. Councillor Cardiff, do you wish to come back?
Yeah. Well, given that you're called into the highly vulnerable use, I think it's the only use. So really, we've got a decision to be made here today. We either grant this as a house or we refuse it and let it naturally fall down. So when you're ready, Chair, I would strongly recommend that we let this development go ahead. We support it. And so when you're ready, I'd be willing to put that forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gareth. So if I understand that right, you're proposing that we go against officer recommendation and go and look for approval.
That's right. Thanks, Chair.
For that, we would need strong reasons why we go against planning policy of not allowing development within a vulnerable. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Gareth. We'll see how the debate progresses. Thank you. Councillor Tom, please. And I see Councillor Angela has got a hand up. I take it that's a new hand. So Councillor Tom, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to agree with Councillor Adrian and Councillor Angela. I think that obviously you wouldn't put something here if you were building a new dwelling, but the dwelling is already there. It seems to me that the dwellings to the right are even more vulnerable. And if we're going to raise the floors, then this is going to be less vulnerable than those. So I think we have to understand that planning is a rules-based system, but we also, I think, have to be a bit pragmatic here. And I agree also with the previous councillor that if we don't allow this to go forward, this thing is probably just going to fall down. So I would be inclined to support the application to allow a development here.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I didn't get a question there. I must admit I was talking to, I apologise, I was talking to Gemma then, but I didn't hear a question. Is that correct?
I think, yeah, indeed. I'm just in support. I think that just supporting the previous comments, really, Chair.
Thank you.
I think we have to be pragmatic. You know, I don't on this.
My God, thank you.
Can I just make a statement?
Please.
Hi, members. I'm very aware where the discussions are going, so I just want to perhaps have this opportunity to come in slightly here. Whilst I appreciate that there's neighbouring properties we can see either side, if we were, or members were to approve this application, you are increasing the risk to that location in terms of the number of vulnerable uses in that location. Whilst I note we have received comments from emergency services that said they could in-house or in evacuation, I think the words was, during a flood event. We've got to be very mindful that TAN 15 does specifically state that in a case of emergency, if anyone in that property requires emergency services, etc., that is a consideration. So whilst I appreciate that emergency services have stated that the best is for them to obviously evacuate to the property, we are increasing the vulnerable risk in that location, which is against TAN 15. And we are not saying that there is able for a safe access and egress in line with TAN 15 for emergency services should they require that services, hopefully not, but we do have to consider that in the future, that we are saying that they wouldn't be potentially available to be supported by their services because of that location. And I just wanted to make that clear for considerations in line with Town 15.
Thank you, Gemma. Thank you. Councillor Angela, please.
Yeah, so actually it's that very point I just going to make, because in the report before us, so the planning officer's own report, the emergency planning officer has said that he doesn't believe that this site will be affected. He's been there, he's been to look, and he is, where's the wording that he just put? He's dealt with the flooding in the area. I'm just reading it from the post here, but basically he's saying that while he recognises it's in the floodplain, he has got no evidence that it does flood here. Now, I know Gemma's saying the flood map has changed, but actually it's a bit of a contradiction. Your own report is contradicting what you're saying. And actually the emergency planning officer says it could be evacuated by by egress on the north. So a little bit difficult here. I'm inclined to follow my colleagues and be in support of this because of those wordings. This would not expedite flooding issues. And the other thing that was mentioned was the parking, because of the potential for there to be graves there where the trailer is. The archaeology monitoring and recording are not proposing that they shouldn't have parking there. They're just proposing that a qualified archaeological contractor is present during the works and that anything that is found is preserved and treated appropriately. So that could be made a condition of the building, couldn't it? So that if any remains or any historical or archaeological issues are there, that they're dealt with. I don't see that as a reason for refusal. And in fact, that's not what they're proposing. So on both of those matters, there is no proposal to refuse. So I'm minded to agree with my colleagues and support this application.
Thank you, Councillor Angela. Councillor Tom, is that a new hand?
Yeah, it's a quick one, Chair. If the concern is evacuation, well, if the floor level is above the flood, then presumably they wouldn't need to be evacuated immediately anyway. So why would that be a concern?
I think an answer to that from when we discussed it yesterday would be if anybody needed medical attention or anything relative to something on those lines. But I don't know if anybody wishes to come back on that, Luke or Gemma.
Yes, just to clarify that emergency services, for example, they wouldn't be able to potentially to access that property. So,
Councillor Tom, you happy for me to move on?
Yes, Chair. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Elwyn, please.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. Well, this is I think, one of those applications when you have to consider things on balance. I think overall it's one of those that you can see both sides of the coin, if you like. But from what the officers say, of course, the existing use and the more specifically alternative uses within the use class D1 includes other highly vulnerable uses, the same as a house. And I think we're well aware of the wider issues in Caersws. And I think on balance, I think due to the comments colleagues have said before, and Councillor Davis in particular now, in terms of evacuation and the attempts there to limit the impacts of flooding on this property, I think on balance, we would and could justify in approving it, whilst accepting also the rightly drawing attention to the issues about parking on the graves, as we've seen in other similar situations in the authority.
Thank you, Councillor Elwyn. I don't see any further hands. Nope. Please, Councillor Hill, please.
Something else really. Is there any restriction? There is a graveyard to the rear. Now there are human remains there. Does that have any effect on this property and our considerations here? Because we've considered the front end where there's parking or no parking allowed. There would be domestic use, presumably, of the garden. but there have been graves there and there are presumably human remains there. So does it have any impact? And I'm like everybody else, like I'm on a fine balance with this because that's a fine building, and we're almost condemning it. Perhaps that's a strong word, but to disuse, and I don't think that's of benefit to anybody. But the graveyard, Chair.
Thank you, Cassie. Hugh, would you be so kind as to take the slide back to the garden, please? I think it showed some headstones down the side.
Yeah, they've been removed, haven't they, and they put to the side.
Not that one. There was a picture of it, wasn't there? There you go. That's the one. Luke, were you happy to take up Councillor Hughes' question?
Yeah, I mean, with a conversion scheme such as this, we would remove permitted development rights. So they'd obviously have to apply to us if they were going to build anything within the garden itself. So if they're going to put any sheds up or anything like that, they'd have to apply.
So, Chair, if there are any family members or acquaintances who would want to visit those gravestones, how is that accommodated?
Who wishes to take up that? Sorry.
I was only going to say, I've dealt with a similar application previously, and it wasn't like another government body that dealt with excavations and that within the proximity of graves. So like we can control development through the application, but if they were to specifically impact graves, there is another consenting legislative body that they should go to make sure they're not, I can't remember what the technical word is now, like impacting the actual graves and the bodies.
So there's no implication of having those gravestones there with people named on them and potential people wanting access to that place to celebrate, to grieve, to do anything. The access is
Descendants.
And descendants.
Jem, would you?
I think it would be a private matter, would it? If like access for family, like if the land is sold off to a private ownership from the church, it would be in that person's ownership. Whether there's any covenants or agreements to allow access to the land for families to see the relatives, I suppose that would be something within the legal covenant agreements for it, but that would be outside of the planning process for consideration. We're looking at development works.
You hinted about advisory.
Yeah, it's like Richard's saying, it's not something we could condition, but we could put an informative just to make them aware that obviously there is other legislation or requirements that they may have to comply with.
Yeah, that's grand. Chair, I'm with my colleagues. This is a very fine balance. And it's Luke, I'm sorry, it's fine. This is a fine balance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hugh. Right, I see no further hands. I've had a proposal by Councillor Gareth Pugh to go against officer recommendation. I've not had a seconder to that. And I've got nobody else wishing to speak. So members, I'm totally in your hands, Councillor Edwin. Thank you, Councillor Edwin. Please.
So obviously, just before we do this, if it was obviously to be approved, I do consider that this might have to go before Welsh ministers, as it is a deferral against that policy. So if we could put the recommendation subject to your agreement that officers do check with Welsh ministers, etc., if it does need to be referred to them before we issue that grant of consent. So if we could just put that in the recommendation subject to your agreements.
Members, you heard what Gemma said. Is that something you wish to? Councillor Adrian?
So what do you expect that Welsh Government would call it in?
So we'll make a recommendation today. What the process is, we'll then send our report and recommendation to ministers for consideration. They can either then choose to call in that application or not. Yeah.
So as an planning authority, are we obliged to do that because we're going directly against policy and it's not up to them to kind of look to see it for themselves?
In relation to flooding, yes.
In relation to flooding.
Especially, so this week a new TAN 15 has also been published. It doesn't impact the consideration for this. It does state flood zone 3, highly vulnerable, is not supported. But within that policy, it does state within that applications contrary to that should be referred to them for consideration prior to determination. So yes, there is that extra level, shall we say, and I think we have, as members, had recent applications that have followed that process with flooding, that they'll be referred to them for consideration.
Diolch, thank you, Gemma. Councillor Adrian.
Yeah, I just want to ask about, before we go to a vote, what is happening about the car parking that was proposed? It's the area where the trailer is on that one photograph, is it? Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
So
We
not
would-
allowing
would
that,
look-
or
We would look if it's agreeable to put a condition on that there's no parking in that location.
By the side of the trailer is.
well, where the trailer is parked now? Can't that be allowed? I mean, it's parking.
I think what was highlighted was there are graves there.
Yeah.
So I think that is why they are looking for that condition.
But there's something about archaeological dig or something. I mean, and you're not going to disturb it. I mean, it's probably sacrilege, and is it park on top of a grave? I don't know.
It's not planning, is it?
It's not, yeah.
It's not.
It's what?
It's not planning, is it?
Okay.
Planning policy.
Take that then. Yes, that's all I want to know. Thank you.
So, Councillor Pugh, can you reiterate your proposal, please, in based on how you've heard this discussion go? So you're going against officer recommendation. You've heard what Gemma have said. You've heard what the officers requested in relation to planning. So how would you like your proposal to be worded, please?
Well, first of all, I disagree with getting this called in and asking the ministers to make a final decision. I see that as undermining us as a committee. Surely we are in a position where we can make our own decisions here in Powys.
I think we are going directly against a policy that I think is black and white, and I think that is where we find ourselves. So I think we would have to be doing that legally. Statutory, yeah.
Requirement under that from Welsh ministers, yeah.
So Councillor Pugh, would you be so kind as to word your proposal?
Well, I propose we go against officer's recommendation as well. We got two choices here. We either grant it for this use, or we're going to see a lovely building which is going to be left to deteriorate and fall down. There's no other use for this building.
There are other uses.
So Councillor, looking for some guidance here. Would you be happy to propose that we go against officer recommendation for the reason that it is currently located within a residential area? And that
that's fine.
Almost a precedent has been set in relation to its locality.
Yeah, that's very good. Thank you.
Yeah. Is there anything else you need to be putting on it? No. The park.
Deferred or delegated for us to see.
And delegated back to
And the condition.
of the parking. Yeah. Councillor Pugh, are you happy with those?
Yeah, happy with that. Thanks, Chair.
Seconder was Councillor Edwin. Councillor Edwin, are you happy? Thank you. Carol, did you get all that to be able to put into the vote box? And then the committee have heard the way we've gone, and we will put that in as we're moving forward. If everyone is happy, I don't see any further hands, so can we go to the vote? Please, Carol. He has a legacy hand, Councillor Adrian, is it? There you go. It's 4 minutes past 12, 4.4. It's in our chat box, members. 4.4, to approve contrary to officer's recommendation and parking condition. We have 4 of this. Members, has everyone had an opportunity to vote? Yeah, are you happy, Carol? Have you had the right number?
So Chair, 13 members eligible to vote. 13 members voted to go against officer's recommendation and approve the application. None against and no abstentions. So 13 members went contrary to officer's recommendation.
Thank
to
you.
approve.
Thank you, Carol. I think you summed that up enough without me needing to do the same. So thank you very much, Luke, for presenting that, and thank you, members, for the way in which you went about that tricky application. Good, right, moving on, 4.5, agri notification, as Councillor Adrian to leave the room. So I say it's an agri notification for a concrete plinth for a slurry separator. And can I ask Rachel again, would you be so kind as to confirm the legalities?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, members, given the nature of the application before you, I confirm the file has been reviewed and it has been processed correctly. Thank you.
Good, thank you. And thank you, Rachel. Natalie, I believe you're taking us through this, so please, floor is yours. Yeah.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members. So this is an agricultural prior notification, which is required to be made under Part 6 of the Town and Country General Permitted Development Order. So developers have to submit a prior notification, and the authority's role is to determine whether the proposal would be permitted development or if planning permission is required. And if it is permitted development, whether or not prior approval in terms of siting, design, and external appearance is needed. So the application site is a farm located on the open countryside, approximately 1.7 kilometres south of Berriew, identified here in red. This is the location plan. So the notification is for a concrete plinth, which would measure 3.65 metres squared. It would be within the farmyard adjacent to existing buildings. The works fall within Class A, Section B of the legislation, which is for engineering operations for agricultural purposes. And we've assessed it against Section 8.1 of the legislation, which sets out restrictions of when development would not be permitted. That is in the checklist, which is in the report. And that concludes that the proposal meets all of the criteria, so it would be permitted development. This slide just gives you an aerial image of the site and shows you the approximate location of the plinth circled in red. So since it is permitted development, the next consideration is prior approval. Given that it's a concrete plinth, design and external appearance aren't relevant in this case. And in terms of siting, there are no constraints on the site which would require further details. So what we're asking of members is to confirm that it is permitted development and that no prior approval is required. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. Thank you very much for that short and concise presentation. Councillor Angela and then Councillor Hugh, please.
So my understanding is that it is only due to the relationship of the applicant being a councillor or member of council staff that this has become before us. It's clearly permitted development, meets all the criteria. I move that we support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Angela. Councillor Hugh, please.
Yes, I'd like to second that proposal if I can, Chair.
Thank
Clear
you very
report.
much.
Thank you.
Any further? Councillor Jeff has taken his hand down. I'm assuming he was going to do the same. Anybody else wishing to speak? Just realised I haven't plugged my laptop back in and the battery's going. Nobody else? So Carol, are you happy, please, to take us to the vote? 4.5 that is, members, at 12:10. Yeah, lovely. I think everyone's had an opportunity to vote. No one saying they haven't been able to. Carol, please.
So Chair, 12 members eligible to vote. 12 have voted for the application, none against and no abstentions.
Thank you very much. So 25/0235/agree has been approved as permitted development. Thank you very much, Natalie. Adrian hopefully is coming back in. That, members, concludes our applications before us this morning. So we have a further couple of items on our agenda. Number 5, to receive the delegated list. Hope you've all had an opportunity to read them. Proposed by Councillor Elwyn and seconded by Councillor Edwin. Thank you very much. Any questions relating to the list? No. In that case, we'll move on to item 6 before us this afternoon now, the appeals decisions. I believe we have 2. Gemma, would you like to just highlight these appeal decisions, please?
Yes, so we've had 2 appeal decisions since the last planning committee. One has been dismissed in line with officer recommendation, and that was for housing just 4 crosses. Couple of reasons for refusal, one being that they weren't providing affordable housing, so inspectors went with our recommendation there and dismissed that appeal. The second was allowed at appeal, and that was for a new access to a residential dwelling. That was allowed on the basis that they accepted a lesser visibility was allowed during the circumstances or location of that site. So that was allowed at appeal, and that has been sent to highway officers for consideration with future applications.
Got any questions relating to what Gemma's just brought to our attention? I take Councillor Hewitt's legacy. Yeah. Good. In that case, Carl, when do we know when the next meeting is scheduled for?
Yes, Chair, the next meeting is scheduled for the 24th of April.
Good. I believe that concludes our business today. Can I just thank everyone? I know we were struggling to be quorum today, and I really appreciate those members who didn't go to other appointments to make sure that we were quorum today. So really grateful to you for that. And at 12:10, we'll close this meeting. Diolch yn fawr iawn i chi gyd. Thank you.